Okay, we are back on air. Sorry for that technical difficulty. Lillian, you were talking about Ranger's Apprentice, and I just wanted to say that it's cool that you say that because the Four Territories was greatly influenced by that book, or at least the beginning of it was. So it's really it's so cool when authors like that, like you said, lower themselves to
Mhm.
talk to you. I actually had the opposite experience. I met a big author, and it was a very very negative situation. I'm not going to give his name. He's really big, and basically what I got from it, and I showed my family because it really bothered me for 2 days. I didn't want to write. I didn't want to do anything because I really looked up to this person, and he basically said, "You should quit. It's too competitive. Stop now. You'll never be as good as the greats." And
Ridiculous.
yeah, it was terrible. I mean, he didn't say that word for word, but I could tell he was trying to like a just push me off out of the competition flow, because we were both he was a fantasy author, and it hurt my feelings. It depressed me, just for a day or two. And luckily for me, and this goes back to the hero thing, my family is so extremely supportive of me. And I'm very very vulnerable with my family, so I always show them, hey, this is what's wrong with me, and they can always tell, because the way I am on the podcast is the way I am in real life. I'm actually always very positive. I'm a very positive person. I take from Napoleon Hill very greatly. I'm always trying to be happy. So they could tell, and they were like, what's wrong? And I was like, just read this what we talked about on Facebook. And they're like, holy crap, this guy's a jerk. And so my family has to be some of the heroes who, they brought me back up, and I'm
Mhm.
back to writing every day. So um I know I might that might have been a little bit of tangent, and Andy doesn't even know this, and I tell Andy everything, but I wanted to get a little bit stronger before I told Andy, because I don't want to affect anyone else's writing career. It was that bad the way this other author kind of messaged me back and forth. So it was great that you got to have that.
Yeah, I don't think people need to be talking about that stuff if they can't be helpful or, like if you
Yeah.
don't feel like talking about it, you just straight up say, hey, for whatever reason, or
Oh,
don't talk, or just don't respond. Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. And this person went out of his way to get a hold of me again, and I was like, what the heck? Is this true? Is this true? And then I look back at my success. I'm like, no, it's not true. It's not true. And then
No,
I have people, yeah, go ahead, Andy.
no, I was gonna say I've had writers message me and say, okay, now tell me the truth, and I have told them straight up, okay, it's difficult. There's like I painted the picture black for them, but then I always ended it with, if it's something that you want to do, it is the most rewarding feeling in the world, being able to put that out there. So no matter how much truth there needs to be, because the truth is that being an author is one of the most competitive
Mhm.
professions in the world, you know, even more so than acting or I don't know, all kinds of careers. There's so many competitive careers, and being an author is one of the most competitive.
Hmm.
So I was like, look, here's the truth. I painted the picture black for them, but then I made sure it was like, look, if this is what you want, go for it. The world needs more great stories. And so, like, I think that's the way that a lot of authors should approach it better, instead of just,
Mhm.
crushing someone's dreams prematurely,
Agreed.
giving them the truth. Because the truth is, had I known that what I was getting into when I first started, I would have approached it much more differently. The way I went about, being an author, writing, publishing books. So having someone to tell me that would have been very helpful. So I try to be helpful, but then I don't crush someone's dreams. It's why Stevie's here, because I didn't crush his dreams.
Yeah, but you were very when because I messaged Andy, I got his book, and so this is an interesting little thing you can think about. Coming from somebody who doesn't know anything about the publishing company, Joshua, Lily, and Andy, your books that I see on Amazon were the books that I was thinking were published by the big guys. I thought these were professional novels. And so when Andy messaged me back, I thought he was a god. And I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, Andy, because I still think you're great. I think we're all great. Uh, and so when he messaged me back, I'm like, oh my god, I can be an author too. Um, and Andy gave it to me real. We all know Andy; he's a real guy. Uh, and yeah, but Andy, you are way different from what this other author did. Like he said, he was a dream crusher for real. And yeah, so Andy, when you were gone, I was telling Joshua and Lillian that last week we kind of actually gave real life examples. Actually, I think we were still live. So Lillian said about the author of Ranger's Apprentice. What was his name again?
John Flanagan.
John Flanagan. And Joshua, did you have anybody in mind?
You know, in thinking about the question, and yeah, I think about all the experiences I've had and the people I've interacted with, and I can't really say there's anybody that I have not interacted with that hasn't shaped me in some way, and even in ways that I haven't necessarily realized. I've definitely walked some different paths than I think that a lot of authors have, which I've talked about before on the last time I was on this show. I have a master's in social work, minors in psychology and sociology. I worked in the professional field a long time, and every supervisor that you get in those fields, there's required one-on-one supervision that you go through that is not only coaching about your job, but when you're a therapist, you have to receive life coaching at the same level, just to make sure that you yourself are centered and whole and positive, and you have the mental fortitude to really be able to go into therapy sessions and engage with other people that are going through terrible things and be able to come out that on the other end still smiling, or at least being productive and helpful in some way. And so really thinking about it, those supervisors that spent hours upon hours every single week meeting with me in one-on-one sessions and not only helping shape me and mold me in a certain way, they were definitely influential in terms of being heroes to help me be able to push through hard stuff. And I can't really give them full credit. I mean, we can go back to our own parents or the adults in our lives growing up that taught us things like hard work and what to value and how to push through when things get thick and thin and all those types of things. And so I feel like the list, if I were to actually label the people that were heroes in my life based on the definitions that we were giving them at the beginning, I think the list would be like not exhaustive at all. I mean, there'd be so many people to help form me into the person that I am today that allows me to be successful.
I definitely have to agree. I feel like I'm a walking piece of clay, and but I do let myself only get morphed by people who are going to positively affect me. Oh
yeah.
But like this other author did to me, you know, yeah, it hurt me, but I'm a believer that if you have this occurrence to use it to your advantage. So actually I went through what he told me again. I actually found things that I could work on, even though it hurt me. And one of them was ask your haters what's wrong with your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, it's just crap. It's just crap. I ignore that. But I'm just like, did you not like a certain scene?
I actually did that a couple of years ago, and it was extremely beneficial. Now, I did it as a random reader survey that I sent out to my newsletter. And I said, hey, guys, this is anonymous. Tell me, what do you think is working for me and what's not working for me? And I got some harsh criticism on my covers, about the way that I presented some characters, and some different pieces like that. And I changed them. I went back through and I was like, okay, what is real criticism here that I can apply? Mm-hmm. And what is just haters being haters? And some of it was really helpful. And I changed it. And when I changed it, I found that my sales soared. So it was helpful stuff. It was stuff that I needed to know. And I was pretty blown with them. I said, I can't fix what I don't know what is wrong. You mm-hmm. have to tell me what to fix. And I had a lot of people that were honest enough to tell me.
So I feel like you know what Myers-Briggs is, right? So have y'all done y'all's personality tests? Mm-hmm. So I'm an ENFP, and one of the downsides of an ENFP, if you haven't guessed I'm an ENFP, you probably have. We had a guy on the air that guessed I was an ENFP, and that freaked me out.
I could have told you that.
Yeah. And one of the downsides of being an ENFP is not being able to take criticism. And you feel like you just need to quit, you know, you suck. And that's something I'm really working on. So when I get edits back from an editor, my heart is broken every time. Scott, my editor, kills me, you know, once a month. So it's just the way I am.
He just sent you your manuscripts back, no?
Yeah, he did. And he changed the color from red to purple for me. So he's sensitive to me.
That's good. You know, actually, that's one of the things that's part of my Asperger's syndrome is that taking criticism very personally. It's
Mhm.
like it's an attack on me, and it's not a. It's the Asperger's affecting my brain, obviously. But people with Asperger's syndrome, they tend to react that way. Like if anyone says, "Oh, you know, this thing that you did," or even the shirt you're wearing, or whatever you said, it's super personal. And so that discovery really changed the way that I receive criticism now, because I'm like, okay, now this is just my Asperger's making me act this way. So now I'm going to step back and stop thinking about the criticism personally and look at it from the other perspective. And it really helped
It
me
has
to
worked.
yeah.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's still instinctive. My
Yeah.
wife is, she's laying into me for some ridiculous thing that she thinks I did.
Yeah.
And it's like my instinct is to get defensive. And it's like, well, I like to feel attacked. But when I remember, obviously not every time, when I remember, it's like, okay, I am hypersensitive because of my Asperger's. So I need to be I need to be consciously less sensitive or underreact to this criticism, even give it time to sink in and really think through it and examine it, with distance and logic instead of pure emotion. And that has helped me a lot in our interpersonal relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm actually an ENFP too, but
Are you?
I can't say that I have an issue with criticism. I almost welcome criticism when it comes to my writing, mainly because I think when I first started writing, I was really hurt about it, and it it felt almost like somebody was just pulling back layers of skin when I had people sitting there looking at my stuff and telling me everything I did wrong. But then when I fixed everything and saw that I had actually grown, and gotten better with my writing, that I was like, oh wait, hold on, okay, like this doesn't have to be a negative thing. And so really, I mean, I think over the last maybe 5 or 6 years is really where I just really don't care when someone gives me criticism. I welcome it. It's something really positive for me, really. And besides that, I mean, with my online job, I do have to deal with a lot of more emotional people and people who are constantly criticizing things and criticizing other people and criticizing life, their own life, or how other people are living and the way they see it and things like that. So
I remember in your last podcast with us that I remember thinking that what you do, your other job, and I know it could be sensitive, so I don't want to say exactly what it is, but I always thought that it could be really emotionally draining.
Oh yeah, it is. Sometimes I kind of give up for a few days and I can't log on for a while just because people. It seems like people come in waves, and with negativity, or just really being really down, or some people are just really, groups of people come really loud with opinions or with thoughts, that with their criticism, not of me but of life in general, and of other people in their lives. And it's not always easy to sit and listen to all that and to try to give people the best advice about stuff like that. But if it helps, I just call it empath coaching.
Empath coaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean you're not emotionally connected to it? You just give them the coaching they need?
For the most part. I mean, I often do feel what what they're going through, and I'll kind of pick up on where their mind is going, where their heart is going, so that I can give them the advice that sometimes they don't want to hear, but they need to hear.
I think that's a really cool reason why I think that's a cool thing about the Fantasy Feeds podcast is something, I mean, this is out there, but I think it's cool for readers to be able to come and see the author and that we're real people.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, because no one would ever known that about you, Lillian. And like I said, when I emailed Andy, he was like this god figure to me, and I didn't think he was a real person, and so, but I get emails like that. I would say I get an email from a fan once a week, and they make my day. And I feel like it's this Japanese man on the other side, just like bowing down to me. I'm like, hey man, I'm a regular person. And one person actually asked me like, what can I do to help you? And I was like, just leave a review, man. And your kind words have done enough. And I'm just like, am I really that cool? No.
I was gonna. Last week I did mention beta readers and advanced readers, but I think it does take a lot of guts to get this manuscript that someone spent hours or weeks or months or even years laboring to create, and sort of it takes a lot of bravery to say, I'm sorry, I don't like this. You did this wrong. And then to send it back to that person and then defend your stance when like when my beta readers send me a comment, I'm like, okay, now tell me about this. I grill them, not because I'm feeling criticized, but because I want to know what they're thinking, why it, bothered them or they liked it. And so I think it takes a lot of guts to do that, because like you said, Stevie, you saw me as this mythical author figure. I imagine the authors that I really like. I feel like they're so far above me that if I was to criticize Scott Lynch or Brandon Sanderson, it would be like who am I to say that? So having a beta reader do that for you, you send them your book, you saying, look, I'm trusting you, but even that. It's still really tough for them to actually send it back. And so the people who have had the guts to stand up to me, so to speak, and to send me back their critiques and their advice and their suggestions, I always try to treat them with a lot of respect and gratitude, because it is really difficult to criticize something so sensitive.
Oh, I know it's off topic, but should we do the commercial before we do the reading?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So I know we can just go on and on and on.
Yes, that's the downside of having just an hour-long podcast.
I know.
You can only talk for an hour.
Yeah, and Andy and I like to talk.
Yes, definitely. Stevie likes to just fill the silence with whatever. I like to talk. Once I get started on something, then I just keep talking.
I'm ecstatic.
I hear you. I could talk about just the Myers-Briggs for like the next 2 hours. So
we should okay, Andy, let's get him on. Actually, Lillian, you should come on too, because I could talk about that for hours as well. I love it.
You'll find it interesting. I was actually an INTJ for the first 30 years of my life. And I remember that. I went through 2 years of intense meditation to change it, because I wanted to change it. And now for the last 3 or 4 years, every time I take it, I'm an INFJ. I was able to get my T over to an F, which is what I wanted to accomplish. But it took me like 2 years of meditation to accomplish that.
That's judgment versus feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. I essentially could conceptualize and cognitively think about my feelings, but I couldn't experience them. And I wanted to get to a place that I could actually experience the feelings and feel them like other people could, so I could better interact.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm
fascinating.
ENTJ.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that extrovert was probably one of the biggest reveals, like the biggest shocks for me, because I don't think of myself as an extrovert. But then, like I said, once someone gets me started talking, it's just like.
Which is funny, because most people tell me I'm an extrovert, and I've never been an extrovert. I'm an introvert through and through. But it comes across as extroverted on social media and online, because the way that I present myself. And I need a lot of time off by myself to essentially recharge, so I can go back online again and be extroverted. But
you do come across that way.
But cons drain me. They drain me. I got to go and like spend time in quiet, and I got to recharge and get all my energy back, so I can go back out again. It's not so much that I don't like being around people, but I need my own time to recharge. I can't just be on all the time. I have to have my own space.
Yeah, that's the same for me, which is why I was so surprised when I scored EN as an extrovert. And I've taken the test, I think 2 or 3 times, and every time I've scored as an extrovert. And I always know that when I go to the con, it's 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm on stage the whole time. I'm going 100 miles an hour, talking, having fun. 6 o'clock, I tap out and I go to my hotel room or my Airbnb, and I am done. Yep. I need that time to recharge too. So I always thought of myself as an introvert. But now, the test is interesting, and it's interesting because like as I look about the things that I like to do. Like my wife loves socializing with her sister who lives about 5 minutes away. So literally 3 times a week, we're over at their house. And I don't necessarily participate in the conversations, but I'm sitting there and I'm sort of absorbing what they're talking about and getting, interested in what they're saying. And so I sort of do draw energy from other people in that weird way.
Yeah, and that's what the difference is. And I think people, in especially society, don't understand extrovert and introvert in the same way. Extrovert draws energy from other people. That's what essentially gives them their drive, where introverted people need their alone time to gain energy.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing. Anyways, on to the commercial. This week's episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast is brought to you by Wrecker's Gate by Eric T. Knight. When Wolf Rome discovers a mysterious ancient axe hidden in a deep cavern, the powerful artifact wins him a throne and unlocks a prison. Melikath and his followers have languished beyond memory for eons, but now the feared guardians again roam the land, sowing disease and destruction. The enigmatic stranger Lowland claims to be immortal. He also claims to bear the world's only hope, sorely needed weapons to be employed in the war against Melikath. When these weapons prove to be dangerous and unpredictable, Rome soon begins to doubt his true motives. But with apocalypse looming, Melikath must be stopped no matter the cost. For where immortality goes, chaos follows. Action, mayhem, and raw emotion, a potent cocktail of epic fantasy magic. Wrecker's Gate by Eric T. Knight. Read for free right now on Amazon Kindle Unlimited and find out more about the author at erictknight.wordpress.com. That's erictknight.wordpress.com. A forgotten prison, a powerful artifact, an epic tale begins.
I love his last name, Knight.
Yeah, it's
so lucky. I had this guy come in because I help my dad with his business in the morning, and it's a very redneck business. So he sells gun parts, and I have no passion for that, but I have a passion for the marketing. And anyway, his English was broken. You could just tell he's from the country, but his last name was Featherstone. And guess what? The last name of my new character, my new book's going to be Featherstone.
Very cool.
Like, yeah, just
fantasy.
Such a cool last name, Featherstone. So we are going to be reading a book that I wrote that Andy put his name over. Right, Andy?
That's right. That's right, Stevie.
Yeah. So I'm going to be the narrator today.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the story from my story from the Ragged Heroes anthology. Because I put it together, I decided that I'm going to call my story Ragged Heroes, and no one can argue with me.
Yeah.
So I chose this story not self-centeredly, but because it was the only one with enough parts for all of our guests. We lost J.T. Williams, but we've got Joshua and Lillian to share the parts. So this story is about the Deadheads, like basically a company of the Legion of Heroes that is the dregs of the army. And these guys are a bunch of useless outcasts, in essence. One of them faints at the sight of blood, which is a terrible thing for a soldier to have. Or another one, he collected ears from his enemies, but he collected them from a friendly tribe instead of the enemy. And so all the people in this company of Deadheads, they're like the outcasts, but they're the ones who ultimately become the heroes at the end of the story. And it was probably the most fun I've had writing a story in years.
Yeah, you were always very enthusiastic about this story when you brought it up during the podcast, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so does everybody, who's taking Jeremy's? Do we have that all situated?
Yeah, we've got the parts.
Okay, cool. Is everybody ready for me to start?
Yep.
All right, just clarify, like I will be saying words incorrectly. So, all right, with that, we begin. A tumult of shouts and laughter echoed within the tavern, but a handful of legionnaires stood outside, drinking in the cool night air rather than suffer the stale, stinking reek of sweating men, vomit, and yeasty ale.
Here we are, lads.
Weasel gestured towards the tavern.
Best ale in camp.
Only ale in camp.
Owen whispered.
At least legally.
One of the legionnaires, a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark eyes and a jawline that could cut diamonds, stepped forward and thrust out a hand to bar their progress.
Not a bloody chance, Deadheads. Not when you smell as bad as you look.
Another man, slimmer with angular features, narrow shoulders, and bright scarlet hair, snickered behind him.
There's a pig trough around back of the tavern. I might be able to convince the tavern keeper to pour some ale in there for you.
Weasel shot the red-haired man a rude gesture.
Get bent, Indar.
He squared up with the other legionnaire, uncaring that the man towered over him. He gave a little sniff and a theatrical groan.
You don't smell much better yourself, Davind.
Oh, good insult.
Davin laughed.
You'll have to get a bit more creative if you want to get past me.
His eyebrows rose as his eyes fell on Indin.
Bloody hells, Weasel. You found yourself an ogre roaming the mountains, did you?
Endon's face hardened.
No.
Durvain stepped forward.
In your mother's bed. Said he was the best lover she'd had since your uncle father.
Davin's face darkened.
Little puppy's got some bark on him, does he?
He moved around Weasel to stare down at Duvain.
What's your name, meat?
Your father.
Duvain snapped. Behind him, Eden chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that resembled a half growl. Davin's fist clenched, but Endon's... Is it Endon's, Andy?
Endon, yeah.
Endon stepped forward to loom behind Duvain. Davin studied Endon. I'm getting... Okay. As if sizing him up.
If you don't mind,
Owen said, interposing himself between Duvain and Davind.
We'll just get our ale and be on our way.
Not smelling like that, you won't.
Indar sneered. Owen shot the man a sweet smile.
You put in a hard day's work sometime, Indar, and maybe you'll find out what it means to be a real man.
A third legionnaire, this one not quite as tall or wide as Davind, snorted. Seems like you real men are busy mucking around in shite, while us little nobodies get to do all the fighting. He shook his head, tisking. It's unfair world we live in. I know I'd love nothing more than latrine duty.
You'll get your chance,
Weasel retorted.
Now step aside before I set my ogre here to rearrange your spinal column. I'd say having your head shoved up your ass could improve your looks significantly.
Endon loomed over Davind. Despite his height, the legionnaire barely reached Endon's chest. Endon flexed one huge fist the size of Davind's head.
Bah!
Davind stepped aside, pinching his nose.
I doubt the place could get any worse than it already has. Third platoon is in there, and you know what that means.
Weasel rolled his eyes.
Aye, the dog buggers are waving their pricks around like they know their business.
Davind snorted.
All they know to do is stick their fingers in their bungholes. I bet even Owen here could figure that out.
Owen colored and bristled, but Davind gave a dismissive wave.
Enjoy your ale, deadheads. Keep the big one on a leash. Oh, wait. It's in my color. Is that my voice?
Yeah.
Is that my voice? All right. And keep the big one on a leash. He gets too much liquor in him. He's likely to collapse and crush half a dozen men.
With a one-fingered salute, he turned back to his drink and his squad. Weasel hustled them towards the door, where a crowd of men stood between them and their drinks. The little rat-faced legionnaire slipped through the press of people with the expertise of a thief in a crowd. Heads turned towards them as Endon ducked beneath the lintel. When he stood, his head nearly scraped the wooden ceiling beams. Men gave way for him, and all eyes followed his progress toward the bar. Duvain read tension in Endon's shoulders, his stiff spine. His brother had no desire to be the center of attention. He'd drawn stares since his 5th birthday. Endon wanted to be normal, not the freak of nature people had believed him to be for so long. Corporal Rold sat at the bar, a tankard of ale clutched in his hand. Despite the crush of legionnaires, there was an empty chair on either side of the corporal. Perhaps the dagger driven into the wooden bar top had something to do with that. The tavern keeper shot nervous glances at the blade every time he hustled past, but said nothing. The storm brewing in Rold's eyes swelled to a full-blown gale as he saw them approach.
Piss off, the lot of you. Only real men drink here. Real man reporting for duty.
Weasel snapped off a mocking salute.
Tavern keeper, 4 of your finest ales, on me.
With a wink, he hefted a purse.
You didn't.
Owen groaned. Weasel shrugged.
He was the one stupid enough to get within lifting distance of me. 2nd platoon ought to know better by now. If Davin's pockets end up being a few imperials lighter, it'll teach him to be more cautious of his belongings.
4 tankards of ale arrived a few minutes later, filled to the brim with a thick layer of froth. Duvain hesitated a moment before taking a sip. The potent taste, a mixture of malted barley, yeast, juniper berries, and herbs he'd never tasted before, set him coughing. Weasel and Owen laughed, and even Endon smiled. Duvain scowled, which only made the 2 legionnaires laugh harder. He'd never been much for ale. He'd prefer a good Varamian wine or a Nicilian brandy. On the rare occasions he'd managed to scrape together enough coin to buy it, he knew better than to order such woman's shite at a Legionnaire's bar. He'd gotten his bullocks kicked in the last time he'd made the mistake. Gritting his teeth against the syrupy brew, he forced himself to swallow. Thankfully, Endon emptied his tankard in a few quick gulps, and Devane could pour the rest of his into his brother's mug, while Owen and Weasel drank deep from theirs. Drinking was one of the few ways to bond with one's fellow comrades. Rejecting a drink was paramount to spitting in a fellow Legionnaire's face.
You bastard!
A furious roar cut through the commotion in the tavern. The raucous conversation died, and all eyes turned toward the door.
Crap.
Weasel muttered and drained the last of his tankard. Devane turned to see Davind stalking toward them, his face flushing in anger, fists clenched.
You weasel-faced bastard!
The Legionnaire stabbed a finger at Weasel.
You bloody stole my purse!
I did no such thing.
Weasel proved a superb actor. He managed to look both offended and outraged, with a hint of dignified mixed in.
If anything, I saved your purse. I saw it lying on the ground, and I thought to myself, I can't let my good friend Davin's coin be stolen by a lowlife, so I picked it up and brought it here for safekeeping.
He dropped the purse into Davin's hand.
And now it's safe.
Davin opened it, his scowl deepening.
There's coins missing.
Damned thieves.
Weasel muttered, angry.
I'll be sure to speak to my sergeant in the morning, and we'll get to the bottom of this first thing in the...
Davin's fist was a blur in the lamplight. It connected with Weasel's jaw, a meaty thump that echoed through the room. The impact rocked Weasel's head back where it bounced off the wooden bar. The little man sagged and didn't get up. Davin leaned over the unconscious man.
That'll teach you, you thieving bastard.
Rold went from hunched over his mug to on the attack in an instant. His knee came up into Davin's face, snapping the Legionnaire's head back. He drove his fist into Davin's gut and swung his elbow around into the side of his head. Davin followed Weasel to the floor.
He's our thieving bastard.
Rold snarled down at the fallen Legionnaire. Andy, I totally see your style in that. It's Andy's style, man. I just kept picturing the hunter in my head. Your combat is unique, I swear.
How so?
It's just I can, so now that I've written over 500,000 words, I can see my own style kind of developing, and the way I see your style is the way it's different from mine. So it's cool that I can see that now, and it's just different. And yeah, I can't really describe it. It's just the way, like when you said Weasel, his head going back and hitting the wooden bar. I never would have thought about that. I loved it.
It's very visual.
Yeah.
It's really a cool thing when you start developing your style to a place that people can recognize it on the fly. I know at one point when I was first developing my own, I was writing for 2 different blogs, and somebody recognized my writing style on the other blog and came back to me on my personal blog and said, your name's not on it, but it's in your style. Are you writing this? And I said, yeah, that actually is me. But they didn't know, they just recognized the style between the two.
That's awesome. They say it takes 1 million words to get your style down.
It was about 1 million words. Yeah, I had rewritten a novel 8 or 9 times and trashed them all before I got there.
Ooh, so, that is a lot.
It was 1 million words in the trash before I ever published anything.
Man,
I think I just cracked 1 million words, like in the last few months.
Really?
Yeah, because there's the 3 books of the Thieves series, and then there's the 6 books of the Hunters series. And then there's Trader's Fate and this Ragged Hero story. And between all of those, it's definitely over 1 million words.
Yeah, and I'm getting close to the 2 million mark at this point.
Oh, dang. Yeah. So how old were y'all when y'all started before we end the podcast? I'm just curious now.
I just started writing. I started writing really young. I had a short story done by the time I was 9. I had my first novel written by the time I was 17.
Dang.
And then for the next 10 to 12 years, I rewrote the same novel over and over and over again over 10 to 12 years, about 8 different times. Trashed all those, wrote it the 9th time. That's one that I published. And now I've had 23, 24 publications since then after that one. So it's been another, 1 million words after that book.
Wow. Yeah. I think I'm going to count millions of the word count from the books I published. And I just published my third novel 2 days ago, which was the sequel to The Four Territories.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm super excited about it. It was a soft release. So now what I've figured is I guess I'll just push the first book and not even try and push the second one.
I got a busy year coming up. I just published a book 3 weeks ago. I got another one coming out next week. Both full-length novels. I got another one coming out in May, and then I'm writing 4 more books over the course of the next 4 months.
Wow.
Well, with that, why don't you guys tell us where our listeners and viewers can hit you guys up?
I'm most actively on Facebook and Instagram. I have a website. I kind of forget it's there. I try to just keep all that information there generic, I guess.
Mhm.
But Facebook and Instagram are where I'm most likely to respond. I feel like Twitter is just constant stream of people in and out, and I can't seem to keep up with it.
Yeah, same here. And what is your Facebook for fans?
Just Lillian Oak. They could search, Lillian Oak for my page, to add me as a friend, but my author page is LF Oak.
Okay. And Joshua?
RobertsonWrites.com is my landing place to find everything. So RobertsonWrites.com. That's also my user handle for Twitter and Instagram. But if you go to the website, you can get to my Facebook group, my Patreon, my social media, the whole 9 yards. So, or just go to Google and type in Joshua Robertson author, and I'm like the first 5 pages. I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Andy, anything else you want to add before we end this podcast?
Yeah, go check out the Ragged Heroes anthology.
Woohoo!
Which is officially a bestseller, an Amazon US bestseller in 2 categories as of an hour ago.
Woo!
Yes.
That's worthy of a dab.
No,
Is that old now?
Nothing is worthy of a dab ever.
I only do that for you, Andy, because I know you see I should install a little squirt bottle on my computer screen, so every time it's like bad, Stevie, bad, you just spray me.
My 13 and 15-year-old sons do that.
My 10 and 11-year-old sons do that. Yep.
I tell the 10 and 11-year-old sons to stop doing that.
Yeah, me too.
I think dabbing is going out though. But I'm bringing it back. Just kidding. Yeah. All right. Now that I've embarrassed myself, got to do it once a podcast. I'll go ahead and end this podcast. Andy, who do we have next week?
We have
Who? You broke up.
Jessica Fry.
Jessica Fry. We've had her before, right?
I think we might have had her on for one episode, or I know I interviewed her in one of my podcast episodes.
All right.
Before
Just sounds
on my YouTube channel.
So familiar. Okay, well, Joshua, Lillian, thank you guys so much for being on the air with us. It was a very interesting podcast, and I know we could just sit here all day and just chat about things, the author life and dabbing and stuff like that. But all right, well, thank you guys for being on the air. Listeners, viewers, please like and subscribe. That helps us out tremendously. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please leave a review and follow us to get all your fantastical Fantasy Fiends updates. We love you guys. We hope you find success in everything you do in life. And yeah, that's it. Have a fantastical weekend. This is Stevie. Good night.